Wonderful.
Hello and welcome to this SlimDevOps live, really live, episode
Really live.
38. Hey Pete, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, live and in person on location, I think is what
I
we call
know,
this
how
one,
exciting. So if you
yeah.
are watching this after the fact on YouTube, this was originally streamed live on twitch.tv/SlimDevOps on the 7th of April. So you are live and you are on location. So tell me, where are you? What are you
Give
doing?
a little background here. Oh, look, it's Winnie. Hi, Winnie.
Photo-bombed and everything.
Yeah, that is Winnie from Insight Partners. She's one of the people behind the ScaleUp AI conference, which is where we are. CEO John and I are here in New York City, right on West Street, which I believe is 8th Avenue in New York. For a conference, ScaleUp AI, which is an AI-based conference put on by Insight Partners, which is one of our Series A investors. And so here we're here with a bunch of like really awesome companies across all kinds of different industries, talking about AI, which is artificial intelligence. Of course, to us at Slim.AI, it's application intelligence.
Right.
Hearing a lot of great stuff about machine learning, new trends in AI, a lot of stuff about sort of responsible AI has been a big theme here.
Interesting.
About how when you're training your models, you need to be careful about, introducing biases into them and all that kind of stuff. And then there's just a big group of people. There's a bunch of DevOps companies here as well, which of course, we've been talking with a bunch. And yeah, it's just really good to be at an in-person conference. So they have sort of a virtual event, which, I think some of our community members took us up on our offer to get some tickets to that. So watching along at home to some of the great presentations. And, there's about 250 people here in person, sort of watching the talks live and interacting and doing all of that. So I am in the lunchroom right now, so apologies if it's noisy and we'll probably have to cut out about 1 o'clock here. But it's been really great. So yeah, it's really nice to be in person.
So there's quite a few points to unpack there. You can see above my head it says Slim.AI, and as you well and truly pointed out, the AI at the end of our company name is all about application intelligence. But that's just another strand of intelligent software. But where you are right now, the ScaleUp AI event is all around what we would consider, let's call it traditional artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So like the keynote was led by Andrew Ng, who, if you're in the ML community, you know who he is. MIT professor, researcher, runs a company called Landing AI, which is really looking for ways to kind of put AI and ML into the hands of sort of everybody, really democratize it, make it easier to use and do.
Right.
So he did a talk actually on sort of like low data applications and about how models are getting so good these days that you can actually do ML and AI with actually much less data than you would have needed in the past. And that's very much a current trend. I think, yeah.
That's very interesting because I have a friend of mine, Simon Butcher, who's head of research at Queen Mary University in London. And he runs, in fact, he designs and operates their supercomputer. And he's been experimenting with diffusion model AI to have AI paint pictures based on quite short natural language guidance. So things like, cyberpunk cafe in Marrakesh as drawn by a child. And the results are startling. And this is like brand new technology that literally sort of came to the community around February this year. So it's very much bleeding edge. And I saw an opportunity there. So the next release of Ubuntu is coming up at the end of this month on April the 21st. And I maintain one of the, the community derivatives, the flavors. And I had him create us the code name for this release is the Jammy Jellyfish. And he created a whole bunch of jellyfish artwork using this supercomputer and these new algorithms, these diffusion models that exist. Absolutely fascinating stuff. But within, as in, it's uncomplicated and accessible even if you don't have the hardware required, you can, rent space on Google's cloud, and even free instances, and generate this artwork. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I didn't realize that was AI when I saw that on your Twitter. I saw something this morning as well. OpenAI released a very similar, I don't know if it's built on the same technology, but somebody did something like a Victorian bunny rabbit sitting on a park bench, and literally like Victorian bunny rabbit sitting on the park bench. So that's been a really big theme, sort of the computer vision's really big theme here. Natural language processing, there's been a lot of talk about the GPT-3 model, which, if you know natural language processing, there's been a lot on that over the past couple of years, and just how many parameters can fit into models these days. GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters in it.
Wow.
There's other models that are coming along that have even more than that. And so that is just scaling like crazy. And just, making it so you can use sort of like lower volume data sets and stuff like that. So that's been really good. I mean, I do think that you brought up sort of the application intelligence side. And I think that's something that, as John and I have been here and talking to people and realizing is that there are, you can apply AI to sort of any business case these days, and I think something that we're pretty excited about is the amount of kind of data we're generating, and the way, in a way like Docker Slim, and, the way we're approaching kind of container optimization. It isn't AI now, right? It does sort of static and dynamic analysis at the application level, right? But over time, it makes sense that, these sort of like, we'll know, and the machines and data-driven analysis can really show us the best ways to optimize, containers and application. That goes for sort of our sort of narrow slice of container optimization, but really for the entire, kind of DevOps industry and, cloud native application industry. And so we've actually, there are a couple other companies here who are sort of part of the Insight portfolio as well, who are looking into things like that. A lot of them are kind of focused more on the Kubernetes side. And that, but I think we're going to see an incredible amount of innovation in the DevOps and kind of container space, based on machine learning and AI, and that's the hope. So that's kind of where we fit in.
Interesting. So you touched on some of the organizations that are there, either there to learn or to participate and talk. What's sort of the makeup of the organizations that are there? What's the sort of division between AI and the rest of the industry?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, to be honest, because there's obviously a lot of startups like us that are there, sort of small scale startups. So or even people who are kind of scaling into their Series B and C rounds. Like there's a Boston-based startup called StormForge, which is a pretty close corollary to ours. They focus on Kubernetes and sort of applying AI to automating your infrastructure that way and optimizing it, saving you money on your cloud bill. So they're here, and had a really interesting conversation with their CEO last night. And there's a lot of other small AI companies here. But then this morning's keynote was from Ali at AWS, and she runs BD for AWS, and looking at startups that AWS is investing with and empowering and stuff like that. So you have these sort of really, really big cloud providers. Google did a presentation last night, so that was pretty interesting. It was a pretty technical one. So you have those types of folks here, but then you've also got the kind of cool ones are we took this opportunity because what's being presented right now is a banking a bunch of banking companies that are talking, and it's not exactly something that I have a lot of context for. So but there's banking. The last session I was in was people from IBM and PepsiCo and New Relic, and talking about sort of how they've approached AI and building out data teams and data strategy. So it's kind of all over the board in traditional industries and new industries, and everybody's sort of looking at this. Citibank is a founding sponsor of the conference. So
interesting.
And it's interesting to see how startups and sort of the large enterprise are kind of working together in these contexts, because it's a lot about sort of who can do this, who has the skills and the expertise, and that's the big gap.
I was just about to ask that question. Yeah. So, is it the large established organizations that are driving this forward, or are they, dipping into the skills and capabilities of smaller, more nimble, agile organizations?
Yeah, I mean, a kind of an uninformed take on it, but it seems to me like the large organizations are sort of empowering, creating the platforms or the space for the small companies to really apply the innovation to new spaces. So we've seen a lot of stuff about applying AI to FP&A, sort of accounting practices, applying AI to, healthcare outcomes, or, the way we hire, which has all kinds of like challenges on the, diversity and inclusion front. But these sort of like passionate entrepreneurs who can put together a team of really smart people who really want to go solve a hard problem, and then they're leveraging either the research or the platforms or the technology that's kind of coming out of the larger organizations. And and I think it's very similar to what we see in the DevOps and application development space, where you have AWS and Google Cloud and companies like that are creating sort of these spaces. But then you have startups like us and other startups in our space that are have just kind of a new and crazy idea, and let's go and try it, and we'll pull together some really great developers and smart people, and we'll see if we can solve that. So
interesting. So I'll just take this opportunity to welcome back some of our regulars to the stream. So hello, Big Pod, welcome back. I'm glad you've got a fantastic new computer. Welcome back, Takov and Esme and our podcast. Thanks very much for stopping by. For those of you that joined a little bit late, you might not be able to tell because there isn't a picture window with the Statue of Liberty in the background, but Pete's in New York, and I'm obviously still Billy No Mates in the home office here in rural North Hampshire in England.
But yeah, I'm a little bit of a traitor here as a Bostonian, because today is actually opening day for the baseball season, and the Red Sox are playing the Yankees. And so by being in New York, I'm sort of like trading a little bit on my own. I'm not on my home turf for opening day, so
and I can do the translation. Baseball, that's like cricket with round bats, not flat bats. So I think that's
pretty much. Yeah. Technology stream that talks about sports in a really deep and in-depth way.
So you mentioned earlier that so what I always find interesting about being at events, virtually or in person, is sort of identifying what the trend, the sort of the sort of there's always like a general beat that an event has. So what would you pull out as like the main sort of sentiment that is sort of floating around at this conference?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I can give you I'll give you kind of two takes on that. I think like because the one is very obvious to me, and then one that's maybe like more applicable to kind of the stuff that we think about, kind of in the technology and application development space. So I'd say the main one that the main theme here is very much responsible AI and not introducing bias in models, and how kind of everything we do these days is driven by data, driven by recommendations, driven by some sort of algorithmic model. And those models really can have a very negative impact on sort of diversity and opportunity for people, because they tend to have the biases that modern society has already baked into them. So we do have to kind of fight against that. And so there's been a lot about that, and especially I think that goes hand in hand with what we were talking about with the skills gap, where it's really hard to find people who can do these types of data intensive application development, just build applications in general. Everybody on our stream is knows how to program and knows how to do that, but getting those skill sets into the hands of people who don't maybe have the advantages that maybe some of us had. So I think that's been like a really big overarching thing, and one that really resonates. The second one, the one that's like a little more, kind of technology based or DevOpsy, I think that one really does hit for us. But one thing I found really interesting here is how people it's so easy to make the comparison between DevOps and ML ops, right? And to say that, hey, people are going to ship models to production in the same way that they're going to ship applications to production. And there's been a lot of interesting talk about that, where maybe that's not actually the best comparison, because models are sort of alive and you have data coming in, and then they kind of, they should change as they get more information. Whereas applications are sort of, like you build, you test, that should be the application until you do the next version and release, and then, you have a new one. And I don't know, I'm curious your take on that, because I don't know if I totally agree with that. We talk so much about continuous integration and continuous deployment, and, you should just be shipping, and have automation and automated tests to make sure you stay on the rails. So that to me was an interesting one trend to hear, and then two, like a challenge statement to me where I was like, do I actually agree with that? I don't know if I actually agree with that.
So I do have some thoughts on that, but we also have a couple of questions which I'm going to bring up from the chat. So Esme asks, hold on, I thought AI for you guys stood for application intelligence. What's the interest in this conference for Slim? So yes, Esme, you're absolutely right. We are Slim.application intelligence. But I think the reason that we're here is because anyone that's doing contemporary AI, artificial intelligence, is deploying to the cloud, those public clouds with big compute resources, or in some cases, private cloud with their own curated supercomputers. But the fabric, the fundamentals that make that all possible is containers and the principles of sort of, modern development and best sort of container and deployment best practice.
Yeah. Well, and think about it this way too, right? So like, and we haven't dove into this too deeply. I think it'll be a good stream for us. Maybe Martin, we could do it next week, is like, think about an SBOM, right? So software bill of materials that you're going to generate for your container, right? And combine that with the Dr. Slim X-ray that tells you what files are in which layers, and combine that with a vulnerability report that says, you have these, vulnerabilities at this level, right? That's like really interesting data that can be put into a sparse matrix over time, that you can say like, hey, good containers, maybe Slim containers, or maybe not even good or bad, like, production containers versus development containers, I think we talk about a lot, that creates like, a test variable and a target variable. The real data scientists can correct me on these, but right. So now we have like a list of all of the libraries, a list of all of the vulnerabilities, a list of all of the files that container A has, and we can compare it to container B, right? Well, that's a ripe area for machine learning, which is a ripe area for true artificial intelligence, right? And so I think those are all the things that we're thinking about. We haven't baked those into our product yet, but we're kind of like looking at those things and saying like, okay, Docker Slim is this automated way of optimizing your containers. How can we make that optimization better? Well, it would be kind of silly not to look at sort of machine learning and AI to see if we can use that to leverage some best practices there. But it's a great question. So, yeah.
Indeed. Now, I think we have a question from somebody here. Apologies if I can't pronounce your username correctly, but here we go. Is that do you know who this is? So,
yeah, it's Mac. Yeah.
Well,
so
hello.
I can't see the actual question. Let me see.
Oh, okay. Well, hello, Mac. He's saying he's glad that he's found the channel at long last. So, welcome, Mac. I'm glad that you've
welcome,
become reacquainted with Pete here.
Yeah, I think Mac might come on stream with us at some point. So Mac is a member of the Front End Horse community, who's an awesome stream over at Trost Codes. That's Alex Trost, who does a bunch of front end development in Vue. Mac is sort of the resident Vue expert over there, and so he's been teaching me some things about Vue and Nuxt and how to develop apps. And then Mac's actually been helping us with testing the minification feature,
right?
Because he knows Nuxt 3 really well, which I don't have a ton of experience with, and so he's been walking through our container optimization and is building a pretty cool app. I won't give away the spoiler alert. I won't give away what it is because I'm excited. But I think he has graciously volunteered to give us a blog post at some point and kind of walk us through a Nuxt example. And Mac is just an awesome, like really positive human being. So welcome to the stream. Glad to have you over.
Well, and a blog post is always a precursor to coming onto a live stream and doing a bit of show and tell. So Mac, if you're up for that, you know where to find us. Let us know if you wanna do that. we're super keen on Nuxt here because all of our platform or front end is implemented in Nuxt. And last week I did a stream with Evan from our engineering team, and we talked about the work that we've been doing because we're a Docker desktop extension partner. So we're one of the few extensions that's part of that initial program. And Evan was talking about his experiences using Nuxt and Vue.js, Vuetify inside of like this Electron framework that Docker Desktop are providing to their initial extension partners. So it's all interesting stuff. And then I think I'm just going to have to channel my inner Uncle Ben here. Big Pod says, today I'm going to really be like a broken record. Artificial intelligence is dangerous. I think maybe artificial intelligence is powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility. And it sounds like that's sort of the sentiment, the undercurrent of the conference this year.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody here would disagree with Big Pod on that, and I don't think I necessarily disagree. And I don't think it's an easy problem to solve either. I think it's the issues around diversity and equity and inclusion are really difficult. They're really real. They're not straightforward. Oh, let's just exclude this and include this. Kind of challenges. They're really baked into society at large. And so, I don't disagree with that. I'm not quite making my bomb shelter and getting ready for Terminator 3, but I definitely think it's the right time to be having this conversation about how do we do this responsibly, and how do we make sure that the outcomes are fair to everybody. And I think it's really good and gratifying to be hearing people talking about that actively.
And Eric, who runs the R podcast, the R language podcast, says even statistics can be dangerous if not used responsibly. Indeed, it can be hugely misleading and have catastrophic events with inside an organization if not reported correctly. Now, prior to this, you were talking about, the application of AI and the sort of the difference between like an evolving AI model and sort of traditional software deployment. And this is something I've just started to get an appreciation for, where you can have a fairly static AI model, but the power of AI is being able to run lots of sort of differently seeded models over the same data set to sort of get a spread of results and see lots of different analysis over the same sort of data set. And so this sort of flies in the face of what we strive for in sort of cloud deployments, which is some degree of predictability and reproducibility. Yeah, exactly. And AI is kind of designed to give us lots of variability and scope on what we're looking at. So I do agree there's kind of a disconnect there, but then again, the way that you deploy and orchestrate that stuff is entirely compatible with how we've been deploying stuff to the cloud for the last sort of 9 years or so.
And I think there are some interesting challenges there. So one of the people from IBM in a talk was talking about the linchpin there is observability, right? So like the thing that both of them need is like really, really good observability tools and really, really good sort of like management tactics and tools to be like which containers shipped when, what was in them, how do you know what they went, what did we build, what did we ship. Same goes for both ML, AI, and sort of DevOps and containers and application development. So that was a really interesting insight, I thought, and made me think about Kit and slows and all of that. That's a great slow comp talk, but this isn't the SRE meetup, so we won't talk about slows. The other thing that I think is pretty interesting is just like when things kind of go off the rails, and I think like one of the nice things about a microservice is it kind of fails, and it fails gloriously, hopefully, and you sort of know that it fails, and then with a model it can kind of go off the rails a little bit, and then a little bit, and then whoosh, it goes way off the rails. I mean, when we were working with data at TripAdvisor, we would see that quite a bit. As joking with John that, one day it looks like a little bit of an aberration, and then the next day the model thinks everybody should stay at a Motel 6.
Everything's an outlier.
Yeah. So, so it is one of those funny kind of, but it still gets back to sort of the observability challenge. And
right.
I think the other thing I haven't really grasped with, and Eric in our podcast knows really well, which is these data science containers are just humongous.
Right.
Like someone was talking about the, PyTorch and TensorFlow and sort of how those tools have grown tremendously, and that's really unlocked a lot of stuff. I've worked with both of those containers, and they're both over 3 gigs, and
wow.
I don't know enough about them to know why what's in there is in there and all that kind of stuff. I want to do a deeper dive on that. Maybe Eric can help us with that at some point. But, compared to a Node.js container or, a Python container, something like that, that's going to do web application development, these data science ones are just huge, and it seems like a pretty untapped problem. I know it's a pain point, but
yeah, it feels like definitely a deployment case which could benefit from some optimization to not just help with the security and vulnerability mitigations, but also sort of the agility for deployment and continuous deployment. So Paul has joined us again. Hello, Paul. Welcome back. And he says, on AI is dangerous, I think we need to separate sci-fi AI to AI in reality. AI is here and we use it every day. Indeed we do, because most smartphones are packed to the gills with neural chips and AI accelerated workflows on the silicon. And he says the company I work for uses it every day to aid in providing tech support to our end users. So there's another sort of business case example of AI, which is well beyond where I've seen most sort of visible, excuse the pun, the most visible expression of AI has tended to be in machine vision and image processing and things of that nature. Yeah.
Well, conversational AI has been a big topic here, and I think with the GPT-3 model from Google, that was like an evolution of BERT. And, I don't know enough about the research to speak about that cleanly, but I do think that we're seeing more and more business applications, and that's like, it was an interesting comment from Andrew Ng in the beginning, which was that we're just at the very beginning of this. It feels like we've been doing AI and ML for a long time, but when we think about the business applications, and to a large extent we have, but when we think about the business applications and like just what you can do with it, from chat apps and tech support to booking a hair salon to generating a new image, or making Face ID work better, or whatever the case is. It's still pretty early in the game for like the application of all of these technologies, and the technologies themselves continue to accelerate. So I would agree with that. I'm not running for the tinfoil hat just yet on all of this, but these conversations early, I think, are also healthy.
So our colleague Aisha is in chat, and she says, "Hey everyone, it looks like we're discussing existential philosophy."
And nobody called Aisha. Get her in. This is like her topic. Yeah.
Right, indeed. And also Eric has popped up again, and he's dealing with large data sets and large containers, and he says a key capability for me is to integrate statistical and data verification within the same CI/CD workflows as traditional DevOps testing. So I think, Esme, to go back to your question, why are we at an AI, traditional artificial intelligence conference? It's because we can help solve some of the challenges that organizations that are working with massive containers and large data sets and deploying into, public and private clouds, we can help lower friction in those DevOps challenges for sure.
Exactly right.
Now, I know that where you're sat right now, Pieter, you're about to get invaded by the hungry horde of lunch goers. This has clearly sparked a lot of discussion in chat today. It's lovely to see you all back with us with such good insight from your own lives and your own work as to where AI applies. it feels a bit mean to sort of cut this conversation short, but if you join us in Discord, you'll find the links in the website above my head. If you've got more questions about what we've learned from being at ScaleUp AI, or you want to share some of your experiences in deploying AI based container workloads, or how the application of your AI works in your real world, we'd love to learn more about that, because certainly data science and ML is a key area for us to help reduce some friction, as Eric says, in deploying these complex workloads in an efficient way. So we'd love to hear more. And also, if you've been using Docker Slim and Slim.AI, what could we do better to make your life less painful working with, what is a complex domain with, probably, I'm going to say almost definitely the most complex sort of software payload that you would deploy into the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try to post a few other links to talks, or if I find anything interesting, I'll post those in the Discord. And yeah, no, it's been really great. Yeah, I wish I could stay on and chat a bit longer. I just, it's like any conference, the quiet space when the talks are going on is the lunchroom, and then lunch happens, and there'll be probably 200 people in this room in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, really appreciate all the conversation that's in the chat, and let's keep it going in Discord. That sounds really great.
Absolutely.
It's been a really great conference, and if anybody's interested in hearing more, just ping me on Discord, ping me directly, or happy to chat more. It's been super interesting. So yeah, I know it's a great topic.
Well, thank you very much for carving out some time in your busy schedule at the ScaleUp AI conference, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
It was terrific talking to you and hearing about all of that. And for everyone that stopped by, thanks for joining us. We will be back same place, different time. We're a few hours short of when we normally broadcast, but we'll be back next week at 3 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. UK time. So that's 9 p.m. Central European time. And we look forward to speaking to you all again. I'm going to cook up something interesting for the next one.
Okay. I like that. I was just wondering, what are we doing on the next one?
So there's a teaser.
We must be getting back hands to keyboard pretty soon. So,
yes, I think we'll do something practical. So I'm not sure what yet, but there's a couple of interesting things that are floating around at the moment that I want to dig into a little bit. So maybe we'll do something practical next time.
That always lead to the best streams. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to try this.
I feel like those ones that we decide a couple of hours before. Hey, how hard could it be? Those are always the interesting ones. So maybe we'll do some kind of challenge. If anyone wants to pose a challenge, let us know in Discord. Well, I'll have a crack at something hard.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. Well, thanks for having me, and I look forward to that for next week. So
thanks, Pete. Enjoy the rest of your time in NYC, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye for now.